Okay, it's 4 o'clock, and I want to welcome you to CASDA's webinar, Best Practices from Experienced Homeschooling Parents. My name is Mike Picarillo, and I'm the Executive Director of CASDA, and I'm down here in my basement today. In a moment, I'll introduce today's webinar moderator, who will also then in turn introduce our panelists. But before doing so, I'd like to give you a few housekeeping tips to assist you in your webinar experience. First of all, CASDA has turned off your audio and visual capacity to ensure that the audio is clear by minimizing any of the feedback that's caused when you have multiple mics on at the same time. And visually, to keep the screen uncluttered so that the presenters have a manageable screen to work with. We're anticipating over 80 participants today. CASDA and the panelists encourage you to ask questions in the Q&A. That's a box down at the bottom of your screen. We also will endeavor to answer as many of those questions as possible before the webinar ends. We'll do our best with that. Please feel free to use the chat box, which is also down at the bottom of your screen, to share your resources and ideas with the other participants. We have found through our experience in these webinars that a lot of great ideas are shared through the chat box, so please feel free to do so. The webinar is being recorded, and we'll send you the link, and we'll also send you a transcript of the chat. Typically, we do so either later today or tomorrow. I want to thank you for registering for the webinar, and I want to thank our moderator, Lynn Whaley, our panelists, Julie Harmon and Dawn Lapp, for taking the time out of their busy schedules and busy lives to put together, I think will be an incredibly valuable experience for you. I also want to thank Jerome Steele, who's CASDA's Assistant Director of Research and Program Development, for his many contributions to today's program. I hope you enjoy the webinar. And now I'd like to introduce and welcome CASDA faculty Lynn Whaley, who's also a colleague and a friend of mine. She is today's moderator. Lynn?
Thanks, Mike, and good afternoon to all our teachers and parents who are joining us today. We're really glad to have you here. The idea for this webinar was born when schools closed, and all of a sudden I was finding myself teaching my 5-year-old grandson. Now, I'm a high school teacher by trade, high school principal as well, and teaching kindergarten is way, way out of my comfort zone. And obviously, I'm not alone. We've all seen the frustrations that parents are laying out on social media. And teachers, we know many of you are trying to balance supporting your students' needs as well as your own children's learning at home. So for advice, I reached out to friends Dawn Lapp and Julie Harmon. Not only are they experienced homeschooling moms, but they also have secondary students in public schools. Their perspective will be helpful today to both parents and teachers. Our goal for this hour is to encourage you and to provide some strategies that will make things more manageable at this time. So let's start by getting to know the panel members. I'd like to introduce first Dawn Lapp.
Hi, warmest of welcomes to you. And this picture here, you, like this bent and bruised flower, can bloom despite hardships. We want to give teachers and parents ideas and focus. We're all in this together. I've got a college student doing all online now at home, a high school 9th grader, and a 7th grade homeschooler. So we're excited that you get something out of this, and it helps you even starting tonight.
And our second mom is Julie Harmon. Julie.
Hey, well, yeah, thanks Lynn for having me today. So I'm a mom of 4. I have a 16-year-old, 14-year-old, 11-year-old, and a 5-year-old. I've homeschooled for 10 years, and the last 2 years, our oldest 2 have been in the local public school. So I just hope today that we can really just offer some hope to you, some thoughts and suggestions that are going to help you in this time, like Dawn said, to grow and to thrive in this season that is, a little challenging right now. So we can all do this if we work together.
Today, we're going to focus on 6 strategies that we felt were priorities for all of us. Julie, first and foremost, we need to take a deep breath.
Yeah, so we're going to start with relax and be healthy. I think what's key here right now is it's difficult to relax when we're bombarded by bad news. It's everywhere right now. So we need to take some time and turn off the bad news and look at the things that we can control. Things we can control, we can wash our hands, we can get extra sleep, we can take naps, we can exercise. You know, teachers, you can encourage your students to get outside, to get fresh air, to exercise. When they do that, it helps them relax, it helps them to focus better on their studies. Another thing that's really important is being present in the moment. This goes back to not focusing on the news, but being present mentally in the moment that you're in. We have too many thoughts just swirling in our mind. We can't think clearly. Our students can't think clearly. So we have to practice this being present in a moment. And one way that I found that helps to do this is by practicing mindfulness, which is kind of a buzzword we hear a lot today. There's a great book called Parenting Your Stressed Child by Michelle Bailey. And I like how she describes mindfulness. She says, mindfulness increases awareness by teaching your child how to improve his attention in the present moment. Much of suffering occurs when you allow yourself to be drawn into the past or pushed into the future, when you worry about events from the past that cannot be changed, or when you create stories about the future that have not happened yet. Mindfulness shows you how to bring your attention to the present moment, face the reality of what is happening now, and be gentle with yourself as you respond rather than react to the current situation. And I think that's really key, being gentle with yourself, being gentle with others. I really think you can put up a visual reminder to be gentle. One thing my son has when he gets overwhelmed, there's a sign on his wall and it says, stop, breathe, think. You know, it's just an easy reminder, you know, to be present in the moment, take a deep breath. We're all going to get through this.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And having something in front of you that you're grateful for, gratitude goes far in this kind of a situation. One thing that homeschoolers love is, and we're very grateful for, is the flexibility to get out and get more sunshine, getting fresh air. And like Julie said, the news has been harsh, but teachers, you need to take care of yourself, and parents, you need to take care of yourself. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Everyone should get educated outside of the news from reliable sources about the reality of the coronavirus, and pay attention to these comorbidities. You can really know that in America we have great health services, but for some reason people, their weight is high, their blood pressure is high, there's so many comorbidities that we have control over. So I want you to do what you can in order to get through this. And grow something that you like. That is a great science experiment, but it's also a little bit of food stability, especially this summer. And we have, Almanac has great resource for what you can do with little kids, and it goes right up to what experts can do. There's a lot of resources out there. And this picture is my daughter admiring a monarch butterfly. And just ask yourself, you know, when was the last time you were awed by creation? Recapture your sense of wonder, and that's just going to take your stress load way down.
Mm-hmm.
Our second strategy for today is focus on relationships. Dawn, we're all spending a lot of time together with the same people. How do we handle that?
Well, hard times and close times can either separate or unite us. Children are going to take their cues from us, and we want to pull them in as a team effort. We want to realize that this is a formative time in our children's lives. They are going to remember their coming of age, and some children are coming of age during a historic crisis. So they will remember this time. And it's really important to recognize we are all living history. And together, let's purposely make positive memories together.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, and we want to look at these different relationships and discuss how we can foster positive growth in each during this time, because relationships, like Dawn is saying, those are things that are going to last. You know, the memories we make together, those are things that are going to last. So first, when we look at teachers and parents, we need to understand that everyone's home dynamics are going to be different, right? So the best thing we can do is communicate. However that works best, whatever works, you know, whether you're calling or emailing, whatever it is, We need to communicate and be honest and real about what our needs and our concerns are. Don't make assumptions about each other, right? Ask questions so that you understand and make sure that you respond. I think it's important to just give the benefit of the doubt to each other so that we're building and not tearing down. With teachers and students, again, you want to foster building rapport. Communication is key to do this. You know, teachers, you can ask your students how they're doing, you know, not just with their schoolwork, but emotionally how they're doing. How are they handling this time? How are they handling keeping up with their schoolwork? And I think a really key thing is to consider the idea of quality over quantity. Giving less work that results in quality work is far more valuable than giving an overabundance of work that's completed quickly and poorly, right? Quality over quantity is really important. And just another thing for teachers and students, you know, a lot of times students don't know how to advocate for themselves. They don't know how to share that they're struggling with work or, you know, emotionally. So the more that you can ask questions, the more that you can pursue your students, you know, trying to find out how they're doing, the better. Just continue to communicate. Parents, you're finding that you're spending a lot more time with your children. And the most important thing I found in homeschooling is focusing on showing them that I love them and I care for them, that is more valuable even than their schoolwork. So finding out how you can, or asking them questions, you know, about how they're feeling, how they're adjusting to this, those kind of things, and listening to them as they're talking is really important. It's also a great time for you to learn a little bit about your kids as far as their strengths, their weaknesses. You could discover the type of learner they are. Some kids are very auditory or they're very visual learners. Some kids are tactile learners. And you may not have known this before, but you can discover that as you're working with them more. And then you can share that with their teachers, which is really helpful. And it's valuable information as they continue on in their education. And finally, I think this is probably the toughest one right now, is siblings. Siblings having to spend a lot of time together. Again, we want to build relationship. We want to teach our kids to not tear each other down. So I just want to focus on two things. One is their words to each other. We've taught our kids to practice before they speak to each other, to practice asking three things. Is it kind? Is it true? And is it necessary? This helps to stop conflict before it starts. And I found that when I hear my kids saying something that's unkind, I can step in and just say, kind, true, and necessary, and it stops them in their tracks. They think about what they're saying, and then they change the course. So the conflict is stopped before it continues. So that's a really helpful thing to teach us to think about our words, what's coming out of our mouths. And then with conflict with our kids, some conflicts our kids can work out on their own. Some, they need our help. So when there's an issue that they can't resolve on their own, helping them to be able to communicate their feelings in a respectful way. Little kids sometimes need to have a picture that they can show their emotions, you know, little like facial expressions so they can express how they're feeling. But trying to hear both sides of the story, talking to the kids one-on-one if you have to separate them so that you can get to the heart of the issue, what's really going on, what's causing the conflict, and then teaching them to take responsibility for their part in the conflict. Conflict's never 100% one person. It's always a joint endeavor there. So trying to find what the issue is on both sides, take responsibility. And what we do with our kids a lot of times is once they've worked through the conflict, we give them a project or a goal to work on. Our boys have gotten into arguments and we've told them to come up with a list of 25 things they can agree on. And it's really funny, some of the things they end up agreeing on, but by the end of them doing that activity, they are laughing and having fun and have completely forgotten that they were even having an issue in the first place.
Yes, oftentimes we're not even mad when we're arguing. It's not even the thing sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fear or just a relationship problem, and that we just make this assumption, oh, there they go again, and people lash back. And it's that's important to know that humor can often diffuse tension. So it's hard, very hard to be angry while you're laughing. So here's a little riddle that my kids inspired. So while you're trying to figure that answer out, I just want to encourage teachers and parents to try humor. It works for all ages, and the sheer novelty of you doing it is going to take them off guard. So why don't bumblebees ever brush their furry selves? Because they can't find their honeycomb. Now, it's a stupid joke, but the funny thing is when your kids come up with silly little riddles, they end up laughing so hard because, I don't know, they just think it's hilarious, right? And then laughter is contagious. So it's been great. So definitely use humor, and but be careful with the type of humor. You don't want to use sarcasm, because sometimes people are sarcastic by habit, right? So how can you tell the difference between humor that is going to help and humor that's going to hurt? Well, it can be boiled down to, it's going to be making fun of a situation, not a person. So no belittling comments, no insults, rather point out the absurdity. You know, like when when my children, especially when they're doing work they don't like to do, they'll say, like, you know, this is gonna kill me, I can't take it. And so then I'll just say, do I need to get the first aid kit? You know, and just kind of jesting, and it just takes them off the guard, and the anger kind of dissolves. And another thing is, afterwards, you know, like Julie was talking about, you want to get along with it, you need a little time, and then afterwards you can look at it and re-examine, like, what was it that I was really mad at?
Yeah, and just, you know, finding little ways to have fun together. You know, we do fun things together. Again, that builds relationship. So just something fun, like my son, his birthday was during this time that we've been isolated. So the normal things you do for birthdays, birthday parties, and seeing your friends and family, we couldn't do. So we organized a treasure hunt and hid his presents, and he had to work and go all over the house and solve all these clues to find his presents, and the whole family got involved, and it was a lot of fun, and it made something that, you know, was kind of a bummer that he was missing out on special and unique. So he's going to remember that now, even though, you know, it wasn't necessarily what we probably would have planned if we weren't in this season. And, you know, another silly thing we do, we've done a raw egg toss in the backyard, kids throwing eggs at each other, and, you know, trying to throw who can throw them the farthest and catch it. And, you know, just silly things to have fun, get messy. It definitely relieves the tension and builds those memories and relationships that we're talking about.
Strategy number 3 is establish a routine. But is there really a typical day?
Yeah, so it's great to have routine. I think we all would probably agree that routine helps kids feel more stable. And especially right now, having things that are a certainty, you know, in this uncertain time definitely brings peace, definitely helps us feel better. But we need to take in consideration our kids' ages, you know, our work schedule, and the personal needs that each family has. This is going to look different for every household based on the kids you have and the work that you're doing. And I think of routine as really setting a balance between making connections, building relationships, and, you know, our work and our school activities. You don't have to do everything every day. That's, you know, and school doesn't have to be from 8 to 2. You have to find what works for your family. So older kids may need to sleep in the morning. You know, this is a great time for them to get that extra rest, while younger kids are going to be up early because they're always up early, but that's an opportunity to read stories with them or maybe do some of their schoolwork. It's also really good to just consider in your routine having time for yourself. I like to get up in the morning and, you know, just have some time, quiet time for myself, you know, drink my coffee without people interrupting me, and just have that time to get set for the day. Those are important things to put into your routine, and to consider having times of connection during the day that aren't work. So we do that typically around meals. We have 3 meals together, you know, and that's when we check in to see how everybody is doing. You know, we might talk about what we're going to do that day, and everyone participates, but it's a great way to connect and see how we're all doing.
Yeah, that reminds me, I have a Norfolk pine that I just really but I love the pine trees, and I probably shouldn't be growing one in my house because there's not a lot of light. But it's one of those plants that you can either overwater or underwater, and it's not good. And the analogy is you walk by it and it pricks you, and you're like, oh, it's dry. And I have to be careful that sometimes I'll water it and I don't see a difference. And the next day it's still prickly, so I water it again and it's still prickly. And what I'm doing is I'm actually killing the plant because of my intervention. And I feel like there's a similarity with our relationships. And when it comes to, don't we notice the prickly edges about our relationships sooner than we notice when it's going smoothly? Again, gratitude, we tend to see the negatives quite easily. And so when we're with our family, we want to make sure that we're with them, and we're touching base with them. And like my Norfolk pine, it actually is pleasant. The pine are very comfortable and they're actually kind of fun to touch. But when it's starting to get neglected, it gets prickly. And so we want to check in for sure. And when we're in this house, we're actually bumping into each other quite literally more than ever. So we were talking about having space for things. Consider who needs it to be quiet when they work. Mm-hmm. Who needs a full-size keyboard? Who needs to move around? Maybe they need to be outside for a period during the normal school day. We have 3 computers in a 5-person household, and my husband is remote working, and it's been interesting. And we sometimes we've actually made a family schedule just to make the interactions a lot more predictable and smooth. And I'll recommend that if you're having the iPads and the computers in a public space, so that you can kind of peek in and see, are they playing a video game, or are they actually doing what they're supposed to be doing at the time? Are they chatting too much? And then in your house, you might want to find mini zones that get used specifically and regularly. Just that forming a new habit of, this side of the couch is where I've got my plug for my computer, and this is where I'm going to do my school or whatever. Spread out, and you can create a feeling of peace and respect with just solitude or just quiet and specific places. And the house feels suddenly larger when it's organized and even picked up a bit.
Yeah, those are all really good points. And I wanted to mention, a lot of families, there's multiple kids and multiple ages. So what do we do with that when you have real little kids and older kids? And, one thing I found that works for us is having kind of a rotating center idea. So you spend 15 to 20 minutes with your real little kids, my kid that's in pre-K, and he does Play-Doh for 15 minutes, and then then he does puzzles for 15 minutes, and then I might have a writing activity, so I can keep him busy, and then work with an older child on a different activity, having older siblings reading to younger siblings, and like Dawn was saying too, that personal space, even having times when everybody goes to their own room and they read for half an hour, and it's just quiet time or room time. That's a great way to just give everyone that personal space. And it does create peace in your household. So moving on, I think we're going to talk about setting expectations. This can also help you with your routine. You need to be very clear about setting daily and weekly goals. And this is something that parents can do with their kids. I think it's really helpful, and it's a great skill to teach our kids to take ownership in their work. So if we're asking them to help set these goals, that's giving them a place to take some ownership. You can teach them how to divide up their assignments. I think here is taking into consideration some kids have short attention spans and some have longer attention spans. So you might find for one child, doing a little bit of every subject in a day is better. And for another child, it might be better to do more of a block schedule where they're focused for a longer period of time, on just a couple subjects. And then the next day they rotate and do, 3 different subjects going back and forth. But you need to find what works for you and write it down. I find this is really helpful. Make it clear, write it down. then everybody knows what the expectations are. It's right in front of you, and you can be reminded, because sometimes we forget as we get busy and we're trying to do so many different things. Teachers, if you can be really clear about what absolutely must get done, what are the things that are essential for the students to learn? Because right now, school isn't going to happen from 8 to 2. It's not the same when it's at home. So if we can really key in on what the essential things are. Remember the idea we mentioned earlier about quality over quantity, giving clear due dates. I know one thing for my older kids, that they, got this huge list of things to do for a couple of weeks, and they didn't know how to break that down. They didn't know, they just saw that list and were so so if teachers, you can break down and say, this is what's due on Monday, this is what's due by Wednesday. Breaking things into small pieces helps to relieve that feeling of overwhelmness for our kids. So being really clear and specific, that relieves so much stress. And finally, what is your expectation for yourself? I think generally we tend to expect too much of ourselves, put a lot of pressure on ourselves. So this time, there's already so much going on. We really need to just focus on trying our best, giving ourselves grace. It's okay if schoolwork or the workday doesn't go how we planned. Life happens, milk gets spilled, computers break, people get sick, all these things happen. So each morning, just focus on doing the best you can. That's really all we can do.
Next comes life school balance. That flows from what you've been saying, Julie.
Yeah.
And you've already said that it isn't a 6-day task at home. So talk a little bit, Dawn, about this balancing act that we're doing.
Yeah, and I love that graphic that you found, Lynn. I'm going to repeat what Julie said. I'm going to get really close. You cannot do it all. I need you to know this. Mm-hmm. Teachers, you're not going to get that instant feedback that you used to get in the classroom. Parents, you're not going to replicate that wide-ranging classroom experience. Mm-hmm. Know that we are in different times and be okay with that. Yep. I want you to know that shelter in place is not what homeschoolers technically do, but homeschoolers will have a lot of online resources for managing the family being at home a lot and eating 3+ times a day. There are a lot of ways to get around that. And in preparing for this webinar, I surveyed several friends of ours, teachers quite literally juggling children with work, and nurses, a doctor-nurse couple where they're both essential workers. They do not have time to manage education at home once they get home. Blue-collar workers, people that have both parents lost jobs. So it is going to be different for every one of your students. You can't really know who's falling through the cracks, I don't believe, but we're going to reach out to them as best you can. Mm-hmm. So whether you're one single parent or you only have one child at home, or it's a multi-generational family situation, mm-hmm. or every variation in between, this is the feedback I got from some people who are living it now. So they have some students really do well. One had their child in a private school, and they literally sign on and they are doing the schedule. The teacher is giving them almost the same rigidity, right? And that child is thriving with that. While as another child in public school is not having that rigidity and is getting lost kind of outside a little bit. And another one, the high schooler, she was always self-motivated, so she's doing quite fine right now. So and the other thing is, I guess, a little bit of understanding. We want teachers and parents to be able to feel free to communicate, because I understand that teachers would have a steady income, so maybe it's hard for you to fathom what it must be like to a small business owner who put their whole life into creating a business and it just got shut down quite literally overnight. So, some families are running out of money and food, and that causes all the stress. And as you know, that will decrease cognition. And so some kids they're having to, babysit their siblings. And the one thing I was even thinking about today is that sometimes school does take a back burner, and that is okay, because that is a character building moment. And then that child can come back and, get back into the swing of things. And down the road, don't you want children growing up in America that are going to become the adults that know how to prioritize? So I think, the news doesn't cover it, but I think there are so many wonderful things that people are doing in America. I'm hearing some, stories, but, I would love for people to share more of these stories that are happening. So I was talking about the schedule. I'm just going to look at my list here. If students take the time to email you, teachers, do your best to reply.
Mhm.
Although I will tell you that my high school 9th grader daughter says that one of her teachers confessed that she has 1,000 unread emails because it's getting too much. And the same way, parents, if the teacher emails you, make sure you're communicating back. And teachers, be honest with the students. Julie mentioned this earlier. What is working for you? What's not? Be clear about what is due, when it's due, what are the specific instructions. My daughter has 2 core subjects where the teachers haven't been sending emails because their assignments are on Canvas, and so they're expecting the kids to kind of keep up with that. I'm not sure, if that's good. So be careful, parents. You might want to just ask your kids, say, you have their schedule emailed, right? You know what their schedule is, and say, check in and say, how is this going? And then if it turns out they're saying, well, I haven't been doing any reading for history or something, you can reach out to the teacher. And now that we're doing the instruction, we were just doing review, but now that the extension of the stay-at-home order, now the teachers are doing instruction. What are your goals? You might want to send out an email and saying, your goal is to hit 80% of the textbook this year. Are you going to emphasize reading? Is there points involved in, what's going to happen with the grading once we come back? Just be really clear about the assignments, give videos. Do you want kids to leave comments in a chat window to show that they're engaged? What upload method for the homework? All those kind of things, think about, and there's wisdom in a multitude of counselors. So check that out with other teachers and parents. This workload, is it reasonable for your child? Some children, it's the same workload, right? Would be different ability to handle than another child. One of her class, my daughter's classes, has live office hours twice a week. Now, she hasn't actually used them, but it was, she told me that it was a comfort to know that she has that option to do that. One of her classes does go live just once a week. And of course, I'm sure you teachers realize that the FaceTime on the computers is really helpful. So good to see people's faces again. So, don't underestimate how much the children would like to see you again. And of course, people are missing the hustle and bustle and seeing friends. So just whatever you can, some teachers are doing games online with their students, which is sort of review, but it's also just community. So just use what technology you have and talk to people. And, that's some really interesting points from the people I was talking to.
We know this is an anxious time, so teachers and parents alike, don't be afraid to reach out for help. As you know, there are counselors, social workers, and administrators. They're still working, and they will help you. If they can't help you with something, they'll find out who can. So please don't be afraid to reach out for help if you need it. Well, structure is good, but it's important to stay flexible too. Correct, Julie?
Yes, definitely. And I've seen this some with my kids. My daughter has a science teacher who had assigned a whole bunch of work for last week. And then when her teacher realized that there were several holidays last week between Passover and Good Friday and Easter, she actually changed the whole schedule and, removed a lot of those new assignments, knowing that families would probably be celebrating, those different holidays. And, I just really appreciated that flexibility. My 8th grader, my son, has a teacher who checks in every morning and, asking how the kids were doing. And the kids were emailing and saying, there's too much work, we can't keep up. And so he again adjusted what he had assigned, and listened to what they were saying. So that's really, for parents, we so appreciate when teachers, you hear what the kids are saying and the families are saying, and you listen and are flexible. That's just huge for families. It's so helpful. And something we need to do to just continue to be flexible and to find this balance is we need to ask ourselves, what is most important? What do we need today? There really is only so much time available. We can't do it all every day. Too many tasks make us feel more stressed, more overwhelmed. So we need to just start by setting priorities. If you've got 10 loads of laundry to do, like the laundry never stops in my house, then you're probably not going to do a whole bunch of schoolwork that day. You just can't do every single thing. You may have to set aside a day a week to do that sort of thing. And that's okay. You determine what is most important for your family, for your household each day. So looking at what the priorities are in your home, I was thinking nobody's ever going to go think back over their life and say, I spent too much time with my kids, or I wish I had worked more. No one's going to say that, right? When I started homeschooling, my kids were 6, 4, and 2 years old. And I really struggled to find that balance between educating them and taking care of our household. And I realized certain things had to get let go. And what I found was it was okay. Letting things go is okay. So we need to realize that what we remember years from now is the time we spent together, realizing that, making memories together. So what are your priorities? You have to consider this for your own family and really focusing on 2 or 3 things. Those are your priorities. You start with those. And then if you have time for other things, fantastic. But if you don't, just focus on those 2 or 3 things.
So spending time together doesn't have to cost money, Dawn.
That's right. So this isolation affects different personalities differently. I saw a t-shirt for sale online. I was social distancing before it was cool, right? So introverts are probably thinking, this is awesome. But no matter how hard it is, fun and laughter will lighten and energize us. The mundane can possibly become the highlight of the day, and having fun together fosters community. See the tent right here. You can see this is our camping experience last year, and there's a little tent next to ours, and between our tents is a pile of firewood there. And that neighbor burned their fire, and the cinders landed on our brand new nylon tent and put holes in the ceiling of it. So camp in your backyard, right? Because no neighbors, your own curfew, and you walk inside, go to the bathroom. So I think this might be a better thing, honestly, but it'll get rid of the cabin fever. And that's like one of my top things is, my goodness, it's so cool. You can listen to maybe there's no animals at night, but crickets and see the stars. And here's another fun thing that you could do. You could, since we're all eating, like I think everyone's eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner together, well, we could make some meal special by picking one person each day, different person, to be the guest of honor at our house. So you can have the social butterfly person who's like going a little bit stir crazy, orchestrate and be a party planner. And then you have a person and start with the youngest first, I would recommend, because they'll buy into it more. And let them be the guest of honor, where you're treating them like it's their special, almost like their unbirthday or something. And you can ask them questions about, what was your favorite thing to do today? Or what was your, favorite activity, or just any questions of the littler kids. But if it's the time for your college age kid to be in the limelight, say, say they're studying cybersecurity like my son, and say, so tell me what you learned today, and try to say it in a way that even I can understand. And it's just conversation starters. And then the children, because I think in the households where the children are older and they have different bedtimes, and maybe they even have essential jobs, that maybe they're thinking, oh, I don't want to be together with the family, but really there's no else for them to go. They can come, and on the night that they're the guest of honor, maybe it's gonna be dorky at first, but I think that if you just do it in sincerity over time, it doesn't have to be every night, just this sporadic thing, they might start looking forward to it. On another thing that we can do that's fun, toddlers love music. I mean, we all, I think, love music, but we can have toddlers marching to time. And you can even just get out an instrument and you can sing to music, you can play an instrument, you can drum along with it. And even children with disabilities, you can ask them to finger drum along with it, or hum, or have them put their hands and just feel the sound waves of different kinds of music. There's so many fun things you can do that we have a very long list of tips that's going to go out with this. And there's lots more to go. I just had to pick the top 3.
So strategy number 5, learning is not a place. We know our school buildings are closed, but we can all learn and teach anywhere. One homeschooling mom I was reading about said, if you don't do anything else in a day, read, read, read. Read anything you've got in the house, read aloud, have your kids read aloud. Do you agree with that?
For sure. And to think about reading is, because our subjects are interrelated, we can definitely accidentally teach our children, right? Unbeknownst to them, they're learning fascinating facts. And here's a case in point. My one daughter says she doesn't like history unless she's reading about the people in history. So there's lots of historical fiction that you can grab, and of course use the library. There's a lot of audiobooks that we can access if you have a library card. And look at Sir Isaac Newton. He was a brilliant thinker, a mathematician, and a scientist. We could look up by, Mr. Google Pants will tell us who were the contemporaries of Isaac Newton, who were the contemporaries of Mozart, and look up what kind of a life they were living. You might be interested to look up what was it like during the bubonic plague, right? So you could do lots of different things and read up about these things. And so a couple of things also to mention is for art and journaling. A lot of the kids, when they were sent home, they were given assignments to journal. Even my daughter's, I keep referring my daughter's one, but her art teacher was suggesting that they do an art journal. So whatever form, we're going to want to record this, because these diaries are in a small way a part of history, because you are living history. And it might be fun for them when they're all grown up to look back on how they felt about this, because sometimes we think of the good old days and we forget all the details. So journals are great. And then for science, kids naturally get excited about science and experiments. Planting beans and seeds is a great way for your child to learn about just the whole days to germination and the yield and how much that weighs. Learn to grow extra food. Older students can log seedling rates. And just in gardening, there's a whole gamut of science learning that they can do. We could make a nanoscale Grand Canyon in your yard. There are homeschool bloggers and YouTubers with a plethora of do-at-home experiments to integrate science while you're at home and not blow up the house.
Yes. With math, there's also ways that we can make math fun. And as parents, some tips to help us so that we can teach our kids some of these new concepts that maybe we didn't learn the same way that they learned. I like to bake with my kids and cook with them. It's a great way for them to practice. They can double recipes, which practices fractions and multiplication. We use a website called Khan Academy quite a lot at home, and it's free, has video lessons and practice problems for kids to do. They have kindergarten through 12th grade, and I think even some college courses right online for free. They also have a free app that goes with that. And then just some easy things. Photomath and Mathway are two free apps you can also use that allow you to take a picture of a math problem and then gives you step-by-step solutions of how to solve the problem. This is super helpful, especially when you have kids in high school math or even middle school math and you just don't remember how to teach that math problem. Step-by-step instruction. If you're 10 minutes ahead of your kid in that subject, that's all you need. That's totally fine. You're just a little bit ahead. That works. And use, your older kids can teach your younger kids. My oldest is in Algebra 2, and my one son's in Algebra 1, and she has actually helped him and taught him some things, how to use his graphing calculator, that has been really helpful. So any resource that you can use, take advantage of. And for music and art, and I think Dawn already said this about, interrelating subjects, whatever history period you are studying, you can enter and bring in music and bring in art from that same time period. There's also a lot of museums that are doing virtual tours right now that are online on their websites, local museums and even museums in Europe that you can take tours of. That's, a great way to study your art and your music.
Yes, and we'll talk a little bit about the tip sheet that's going to go out at the end. So our last strategy, life skills. This is what I love because I used to teach business, and students used to get really excited about doing budgets or looking at the stock market because it was real to them.
Yes, as tired as you may be of this, it's temporary. So learn life skills, teach life skills, lead by example. Julie alluded to getting along when she was talking about siblings, and conflict management is important. It's a life skill, lifelong skill, and I even need to still develop my conflict management, right? So just real quick, because you guys are just tight and seeing each other all the time, don't nitpick what people are doing wrong. Praise what they are doing well. Don't try to fix that person. In some dynamics in families, the dynamics are such that there's like one person that seems to be the bad kid. Don't try to fix them now. There's counseling for that, and family, you want to be looking at unity right now. And it's going to be important to acknowledge the grief over the changes that this has put on us. I don't, your kids might be grieving and they don't know how to share it. So you want to give space for that to just give that credence that, you're sad about the past that's gone and fearful about the future. And again, Julie said, be present in the moment, but still you can acknowledge the fears and the grief. And spending time when you're present and you're not demanding of people, you'd be surprised at the great conversations that just happen, right? When you're spending time together. Because we have been so rushed that our life has, I think, maybe been out of control before this, where we're running off to the after school activities and our children are just cogs in this wheel. And here we have a chance to get to know our children better. The best of parents lose connection with their kids. So it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's something to right now, reset and say, this is what I want to do. I want to know my kids. I want to be good for my kids, and to have a better expectation of just being present instead of expectation of getting this done and that done. All right. So you have now, and you may not be confident with what you're doing, and it's okay if you can speak with kindness and clearness. That's what matters. Like Julie said way at the beginning, it's important that our children know we love them. It's important that your students recognize that you are concerned and care deeply for them. So project it with kindness and don't address the consequences right now. You don't always have to say, if you don't do this, then I'll do that, right? Maybe later when they say, well, can I play video games? And you can say, well, because you chose to argue instead of, right? And just calmly deliver consequences. All right. So maybe we need to apologize for stressing grades or athletic performance too much. Maybe we need to bring back manners. Say thank you for things that you don't normally say thank you to. But how many people across the globe today would love to be in our situations where everyone is healthy and crowded at home?
True. It's also a great time to encourage resourcefulness and responsibility for our students, for our kids. Everyone can participate in taking care of the household. This does not have to be one person's job. So we need to help one another. The ultimate goal, we want our kids to one day grow up and be independent and live on their own. Yes, we want this. So we need to teach them. And this is a time we can do that. You can teach them how to take care of a household, how to do practical things, doing chores. Everyone in our house has chores. We typically we don't do chores first thing in the morning. I like to get school done first thing. That's what works for our family. But we do have chores. We have like a weekly, chore day on Saturdays usually. So my kids clean bathrooms. My kids know how to do laundry. Divide up the jobs, decide what works for your family, and be clear. One thing that works great for our family is we do a pay-to-play policy. So you have to fold and deliver laundry, and that gets you 15 minutes of screen time. So one basket folded and delivered. Delivery is very important. Then you get screen time that way. So, that's just one way that I get my laundry put away. We also do a lot of cooking together because right now people are just eating constantly. So we bring the kids into that. They help plan the menu, and then they also help with the cooking and the cleaning up dinner, cleaning up the dishes, emptying the dishwasher, all those things. We can all work together, and those things again build relationship within our families. And finally, calling family to check in on them, reaching outside our own households a little bit to see how the people around us are doing too. It's again a life skill, teaching our kids to not just focus on themselves, but thinking of others, seeing how others are doing, and just, sharing life with them. There's really important things that we can teach our kids during this time.
So again, these are the 6 strategies we've shared with you. We hope that this conversation has been encouraging to you, and we hope you also have some new ideas to try as you're teaching from home. And remember, most of all, reach out for help if you need it. You're not alone. We're all experiencing the same thing. Jay, yes, we have a couple of minutes. Do we have any questions?
I don't know. If anybody has any questions, you could put them down in the chat box and we can address them now. We actually didn't get a ton of questions, but
Okay.
we're definitely hoping to see some now. If anybody has anything they'd like to inquire about. I know that someone asked about if we would have the name of the math problem solving tool where you take the picture. Will that be included in the tip sheet?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can add it. It's called Photomath,
Photo?
or Photomath, and there's another one called Mathway that I use, but we can add it to the tip sheet.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
see.
So I want to say thank you to the participants for coming in and hanging out for the chat.
Absolutely.
Well, it doesn't look like anybody has any questions. I mean, if anybody, looks at the recording and any questions arise, you could send them to, got one here, down here. Can we share the email with colleagues? Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. I think so.
Yes, actually, when we were talking about this, Lynn, Julia, and I, with Mike, we were recognizing that we know a lot of academic and teachers will be listening, but we want you to get it out to the parents to go as broad and deep and get as many people these steps and these helps while they
Right.
need it.
Yeah.
Well, All right. Well, thank you,
So
everybody.
we have, well, before we turn it over to you, Jay, I just want to mention that it's important for all of us as adults to reset periodically. And that timeout isn't just for kids. Sometimes you'll be feeling overwhelmed, and it's okay to give the kids some reading time or some PE time while you take a few minutes for yourself. Call a friend, take a warm bath, go for a walk, whatever works for you to calm you down. Do you practice mindfulness or meditation or prayer? As they say on the airplane, you know, they always tell you about that oxygen. Put it on yourself before you help your child. And taking time for a reset will benefit both you and your kids. And this is a time for grace. This will also help you give yourself and your kids some peace of mind. This situation came on us suddenly, and we don't know how long it's going to last. So be patient with yourself and be patient with others around you. We're all anxious, and a little bit of understanding goes a long way right now. And when the kids look back on this, as Dawn and Julie were saying, what are they going to remember? Are they going to remember every lesson? Probably not. But they're going to remember that you tried your best, that you showed you cared, and that you made memories together. And that's what's most important. So we are glad that you joined us today. Jay's going to talk about the video, which is going to be made available. And we have some supporting material in terms of tips and examples that you can use, which will go out in an email from CASDA. In addition to that, Dawn created a checklist of ideas. So there'll be actually the ability for you to kind of choose them ahead of time and check them off and be prepared for those that you want to try. She's strategized those as well into like rainy day things where people are maybe a little down or moody versus when everybody's energetic and you can't calm them down. So feel free to share those documents as well as this video.
Pass them out.
We hope that you will get them out to colleagues and other parents, because that's what we're here for today, is to help. So thanks again, Mike and Jay, for this opportunity.
Well, thanks to all of you, Julie and Dawn, for your real life experiences. I think they were incredibly valuable. It's good to hear from people who are living the experience. So that was wonderful. And Lynn, for moderating and helping to organize and put this together today. We appreciate everybody participating and invite you to participate in future webinars that we will have through CASDA. And probably just one last thing is just to say, be well and stay safe. So thanks for being with us today.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You can look for an email from me in the next couple of days. Once we get the checklist finalized and the recording will go out. So thank you all so much, and stay well.
All right.